everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get $250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here's the video that you came here for. But with that said, let's get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day, you already know what it is. It is dun, 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 dun. Start spreading the news. I'm longing to stray. And from the very start of it, New York, these vagabond shoes, something, something, something. And from the very start, okay, you get the point. Terrible Frank Sinatra impression aside, can't play the actual song because I'd get in trouble. But what is the topic of the day? You already know. It comes from the city of New York, which is now for at least one day the college basketball capital of the world. As a story that we have spoken about on this show forever. We basically cited the great philosopher LeVar Ball, who said, speak it into existence, baby. That is right. Rick Pitino on Monday officially became the head coach of St. John's basketball. It is a story we've talked about maybe more on this podcast than anywhere. I think I was ahead of this. It is official, and all I could say is this. I am so fired up for St. John's. I am so fired up for the Big East. I'm so fired up for New York City, and I am so fired up for college basketball in general. And so let's get into it. Let's discuss it from all angles. But for people who are kind of new to this show, or they see this crazy guy on social media singing New York, New York, let's give a little background as how I got into all of this. But obviously, look, I know college basketball. I love college basketball. I've covered it for years. And so how this all started, because like I said, I think I was probably ahead of this story more than maybe anybody in the national media. It really came, I looked it up, in early January of this year. St. John's was playing a meaningless game in front of a sparse crowd at Carnesecca Center, on campus. Mike Anderson is the head coach. They're up big. They end up losing to Marquette. Marquette ends up rallying and beating them at home. I just said, this is really, really, really bad. Like, St. John's is so irrelevant, so doesn't matter. And I'm not saying that I'm some 50, 60, 70-year-old guy that remembers the glory days of Lou Carnesecca, but I do remember Ron Artest. I do remember Eric Barkley. I do remember Bootsy Thornton. And I know that it doesn't have to be this bad. By the way, for you young people, those were the stars of St. John's in the early 2000s. You probably know Ron Artest. And so on that night, it was January 3rd, 2023, so a little over 2 months ago. I sent out this tweet, which I had no idea the impact that it would have. But let me read you the tweet I sent out on January 3rd at 8:43 Eastern. I said, St. John's blows a big second half lead, falls to 1-4 in the Big East, and it's clear Mike Anderson isn't the answer. To which I ask, give me one reason Rick Pitino shouldn't be St. John's coach next year. He's in the city, cleared of NCAA wrongdoing. He is the only dude that can save this program. And so when I sent out that tweet, I'll be honest, I didn't really think much of it. But what tends to happen sometimes with a story like that is that when you're first and you have a passionate fan base like St. John's, that tweet picked up traction. And people all of a sudden started DMing me, very important people at St. John's, people that know people were saying, hey, Torres, I don't know who you are, or I don't know much about you, or I love your work. Do you think this can happen? And so I've monitored this story very, very closely for 2 months now. I've worked the phones. I'm not a newsbreaker, but I feel like I had as much information on this story as anybody. And what I will say is I want to take you behind how this happened, because I think it's an incredible story. It's an incredible testament to an administration and a school that realizes where they are in the pecking order and what they need to get to the next level. Because to be blunt, while I put out that tweet, while we started selling our We Want Rick shirts at Aaron Torres online, by the way, you can now get your Big Rick Energy shirt, St. John's fans, at Aaron Torres online. Why I bring it up is because while I kept talking about this and while people in the St. John's community kept DMing me, quietly the vibe that I started to get was just that this wasn't going to happen. That the school didn't want to go down the Rick Pitino route, that this wasn't the guy they were going to go after. They felt like there had to be somebody else out there that could re-elevate them. I was sad. I was disappointed. I was upset. I was bummed out, whatever. But why I bring it up is that really it was the start of the Big East tournament where the vibe started to change. I told this story on the pod a few weeks ago, but it's worth revisiting. The day the Big East tournament started, Wednesday, 8-9 game, St. John's is playing. I get a call during that game from a great Big East source that said, Torres, your dream's coming true. Rick Pitino is going to St. John's. And I said, no, that's not. You must be thinking of Georgetown or somewhere else. He ain't going there. They don't want him. He said, check with your sources. I think this is going to happen. Well, fast forward, I text all the people that I know in the St. John's community. They're saying, no way, no way, no way, no way. And then about 6-8 hours later, they all circled back and said, Aaron, I don't know who you spoke with, but I think this is happening. And so I said the day that St. John's lost to Marquette in the Big East tournament, I said, look, Mike Anderson is out. I believe Rick Pitino will be, I said, I believe a Hall of Famer will be the next head coach, wink, wink, nod, nod. And so I bring it up because I think I was the first one to really push that name. When Mike Anderson was fired the next day, that's when you started to see other people put out Rick Pitino as a potential candidate. But I bring it up because this all actually came together pretty quickly. And so before we get to the impact that Rick Pitino is going to inevitably have at St. John's and in New York City, I want to give credit to really two people. The first one, the most important one, I want to give credit to St. John's president, Brian Shanley. And I'll be blunt, I don't know this guy. This was not anybody that I was in contact at all with at any point during this entire process. But Brian Shanley, for people who do not know, St. John's school president, he came from Providence. Ironically, he was there during the height of the Ed Cooley era this last decade or so. And I think he realized, he saw the impact that a good basketball program at a smaller Catholic school can have on an entire university. How it creates brand awareness, how winning in the NCAA tournament, going to the NCAA tournament is a national and international advertisement for your university. And from my understanding of how things got done, one, I believe Rick Pitino kind of made it clear this is the job I want. But then two, I give so much credit to that school president because I believe it went even above the athletic director and the athletics department. If the president did not sign off on this, if the president didn't push it himself, I'm not sure that this happened. So credit to Brian Shanley because he basically sat there and said what I told you a few weeks ago. He said, look, if this is not just a basketball hire, this is a university-wide hire. If we whiff on this hire, we're just another Catholic school in the greater New York area. And yes, we're in the Big East. And yes, we get to play on TV. But if we want to matter as an international university, if we want to matter on a national stage, we have to nail this hire. And I give him so much credit for going out and doing it. And I give him credit for, over the last couple of days, putting together a very compelling case for Rick Pitino to leave and come to St. John's. Because it was funny, if you remember, Iona obviously lost in the NCAA tournament on Friday to UConn. And, you know, John Fanta put out his story. John's excellent. So this is not in any way, shape, or form a criticism of him. But then John puts out his story on Friday, but then you hear, well, Rick Pitino hasn't even met with the school. Well, Rick Pitino is going to meet with them on Sunday. And my understanding was that was basically Rick Pitino now laying down the gauntlet. Okay, it's clear you guys want me, but are you committed in every way that you need to be committed? Are you committed financially? Are we going to upgrade these facilities because they stink? Are we going to be in contention in NIL because this is the new world that we live in? Are we going to travel the right way? Are we going to eat the right way? Are we going to train the right way? Because if you guys are doing this half you know what, then I ain't coming. I'll stay at Iona. I have other opportunities at the Power Conference level. I think he would have ultimately stayed at Iona. But credit to St. John's for, one, pursuing him, saying this is the way to elevate our entire university, not just our basketball program. But then two, credit to them for then laying out the plan for Rick Pitino, explaining to him, oh, this is going to get done the way that you need it to get done. I saw, by the way, St. John's has basically one mega booster that's been disassociated with the university since the last hire, since the Mike Anderson hire, the guy who basically founded Vitamin Water. I'm going to butcher his name, so I don't even want to attempt to say it, but he has come out and said he will support Rick Pitino in any way possible. And so credit to St. John's for making it happen, but then credit to St. John's for putting together a compelling case as to why Rick Pitino should take the job, which again, officially happened on Monday. So now the question is, what's next? I just told you what happened. Now let's discuss what's next, because again, why have I been so excited about this? So this is funny, right? Because I think a lot of people were like, well, Torres, are you a St. John's alum? Did you go to school there? Why do you care so much? Most people that listen to this show know I actually went to St. John's biggest rival, UConn. While the Big East source was not from UConn, I know as a UConn fan and alum, Rick Pitino being in the Big East makes my life harder as a UConn fan and alum. But why I want this is because I understand how big this is for not only St. John's, but for the Big East, for New York City, and for college basketball as a whole. And I think I discussed this a few weeks ago, but the bottom line is, listen, we talk about in sports all the time, programs that matter, programs that it's quote unquote good for the sport if that program is good. I remember this year when Tennessee basketball got hot, a lot of the conversation was, is it good for college football? Does college football need Tennessee football to be good? I bring it up to say, I don't think St. John's is a program that you would traditionally associate with that conversation. But I'll tell you this, wait until you see what New York City is like when St. John's is good. Because at the end of the day, I always say this, a couple things. One, people think, oh, New York's not a college town. No. New York was once a great college basketball city. The problem is they haven't had anything to root for in the last 20 years. And it's interesting, right? I'll give you an analogy. I might have used it with John Jastrzemski the other day when he was on. But I bring it up because, I always say this. So let's kind of use a different analogy, right? But I always say this about the SEC. Everybody thinks the SEC is a football conference. The SEC is not a football conference. The SEC is not a football conference. It's not a football conference. It's not a baseball conference. It's not a gymnastics conference. It's not a basketball conference. You know what the SEC is? The SEC is a winning conference. The SEC has basically 16 schools now, if you include Texas and Oklahoma, that basically all have the same mindset. If we're going to compete in this sport, we want to do it at the highest level. It's funny, as someone who covers both college basketball and college football, I think there's a lot of college basketball writers that are surprised by the passion for basketball at Alabama, at Auburn, at Tennessee, at Arkansas, outside of Kentucky, which we know is great. And what I say to those people, LSU fans, Auburn fans, Arkansas fans, Tennessee, they want to be great at everything. And so to bring it back to St. John's, that's what I'm trying to tell you. New York fans are passionate about everything. New York is one of the great sports cities in America. New York still has two big-time sports talk radio channels, WFAN and ESPN New York. You know how passionate people are in New York about sports? Michael Kay, the face of the Yankees, the voice of the Yankees, just signed a 4-year extension for his radio show. Local radio, people have never been listening to less in general. New York City, a guy just got a 4-year extension because people can't get enough of his show. And so I bring it up because everybody in New York loves sports, eats, sleeps, and breathes it. And they will love St. John's if St. John's gives them a reason to be loved. And so that's why I'm so excited, because I don't think the casual college basketball fan, the average college basketball fan, understands what New York City will be like. If this team is good, if this program is good, I'm talking 10, 12, 15 times a year. The Garden's sold out. The Garden's rocking. It's all red. I'm not saying they surpass the Yankees or the Knicks. But by the way, why do you think we talk about the Knicks so much on a national scale? It's because it's the great what if. It's what if they were good. Think about how much we talk about the Knicks and they're not good. Now imagine if they ever get good. And it's kind of the same with St. John's. Wait till they get good. I am just telling you, New York City is an incredible college basketball city, and Rick Pitino is going to tap into that. Finally, what I would say, on the court, that's off the court. That's the stuff that matters to me. On the court, just be warned. Rick Pitino is going to win, and he's going to win big, and he's going to win quick. And as a matter of fact, one, this is why St. John's had to do it, because you have a winner in your city, as I've said from the beginning. He doesn't want to leave New York City. It's funny, on Monday when it became clear Ed Cooley was going to Georgetown, people were saying, Rick Pitino, he might sneak off to Providence. No, he's not. I've said on this show from day one, he wants to live in New York City or South Florida. Those are the only places that he wants to live. If your job is in Lubbock, Texas, or Lincoln, Nebraska, or Pullman, Washington, he ain't coming. Doesn't matter how much money you offer him. And so to come back to it, why this was so important, he's going to win. He's going to be relevant. He is going to matter, but he's going to do it quickly. especially, by the way, in this transfer portal NIL era. Again, first of all, NIL, we can argue, is it good, is it bad, paying players, whatever. He wouldn't have taken this job if St. John's wasn't ready to compete in NIL. Beyond that, in the transfer portal, you can flip a roster really quick. Kansas State, Jerome Tang, year one in the Sweet 16. 2 players from last year's team still on this roster from a year ago. Jerome Tang flipped it overnight. By the way, Dennis Gates at Missouri brought a bunch of guys with him from Cleveland State. So Rick Pitino is going to have NIL money. He's going to have the portal at his disposal, and he can bring some players from Iona if he thinks they're good enough. By the way, I'd say this too. I hear this big narrative about, high school players in New York don't stay in New York anymore. Really? Look at the top 10 recruits this year. DJ Wagner, Greater New York area. Aaron Bradshaw, Greater New York area. Camden, New Jersey. They're going to Kentucky. In 3 years, might they have considered St. John's? Probably. Mackenzie and Bako going to Duke. In a year or two, if Rick Pitino had been at St. John's, would he have considered St. John's? Probably. Go on and on down the list. Number 2 prospect in the class of 2024, Ian Jackson, committed to North Carolina. Would he have considered St. John's? Probably. And so I could go on and on. But the point I'm trying to make, this guy is going to win. He's going to win big, and he's going to win now. Now, how is it going to look? I don't know. I think in the transfer portal era, Rick Pitino's never been a one-and-done guy. But I think in the transfer portal era, it's going to be quick. It's going to be sudden. It's going to be urgent. Rick Pitino doesn't have 10 years to build this thing. He's going to come in. It's just going to be so much fun. I could go on and on, but I think you've gotten the point at this point. But I am just telling you, I don't think the average college basketball fan understands how big and how good college basketball in New York City can be and will be when St. John's matters. Well, today they matter, and I am so excited about Rick Pitino being the St. John's coach.